All right, I'm recording my homily for the first Sunday of Advent. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about Advent, tying the readings into it a little bit. Now, one of the things that I'm going to go into deeper, and those of you who've been part of parishes that I've been assigned to in the past, you've already heard this. I go into this every Advent, okay? And so Advent is a season that has two basic tenets to it, if you will. There's two arms to it, two purposes, two themes, okay? The first theme, now as you can see on our Advent wreath, we have 4 candles, right? And so it divides Advent up into 4 weeks. Now the last week of Advent this year is very, very short. In fact, it's only about 4 hours long. But normally the 4th week, we have a full 4th week, or at least part of a 4th week. So the first 2 weeks of Advent, we light the first 2 purple or violet candles. They are focusing on the coming of Jesus Christ, okay? So the word Advent just means to the coming, right? That comes from the Latin. But it's not the coming of how he came. It's not the past. It's looking to the future. So the first thing we do in Advent is we look to the future. We look at the second coming of Jesus Christ. The 3rd week of Advent, marking kind of the halfway point, right? So for the second 2 weeks, we light the rose candle, the pink candle, and that's a symbol of joy. And so we're transitioning Advent then into looking at how Jesus came. The joyfulness, the beauty of how he came as a humble king at Christmas. So the last 2 weeks of Advent prepare us for, if you will, a birthday party. Every year we remember Jesus' birth. It's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. I'm not discounting it at all. But I want us to focus on Advent as it's meant to be. And that means the first 2 weeks, we're not focusing on Christmas. We're focusing on the second coming of Jesus Christ. All right, there's all kinds of theological terms for that. When you read Revelations, when you read some of the more prophetic parts of the scriptures, they talk about God coming, Jesus coming a second time. And that's what we're meant to focus on. Now, every year, I say this, I feel like a Grinch. I feel like a total Grinch. Whether it's the staff wants to decorate for Christmas in the office, and I say, no. And they say, well, why not, Father? Because it's not Christmas, right? It's especially the first 2 weeks of Advent. It's not about Christmas. Now, our culture doesn't know Advent. Our culture knows Thanksgiving Day, and then Christmas season, right? There is no such thing as Advent. In our sense, in our spiritual sense, they're preparing for Christmas. Our whole world, our whole culture is preparing for Christmas. That's a good thing, but it's not really an Adventish preparation of Christmas, okay? All right, I'll go into a little bit more of that in a second. Now, first 2 weeks of Advent, what is that about? Second coming of Jesus. Now, we can understand that in 2 ways, okay? We can think about the end of the world. Now, don't think of the end of the world as in, oh, this is when God gets really mad and destroys everything. Like a little kid who's upset in the playground or upset in the sandbox and just throws up all the sand and leaves. That's not the end of the world. The end of the world is completion, all right? It's bringing the world as he created to its fulfillment. That is what God does. That is what God is slowly doing, I should say. Now, as human beings, we have a part to play in this. Each of our lives is part of bringing the world to completion, bringing God's plan to completion. When you think about your life from its beginning, we could talk about the beginning as in the conception, to that really powerful moment, your birth, and then all the years subsequently to the end, to the day you die. All of that is meant to be part of bringing our world as God created it to its completion, bringing it to its fulfillment. Okay? Not its destruction, but its fulfillment. You don't want people to look at your life and say, boy, I'm glad Uncle Jim is gone now, because everything he did was just so destructive, and now he, I don't even know what I mean by that, but it's not about destruction. It's about bringing it to fulfillment. So you think of your funeral. Think of your funeral. When people are coming to your funeral and you're lying there in the casket and your life here on earth is over, don't you want it to be able to be seen as something that helped bring God's kingdom to completion, to fulfillment? Absolutely, right? Absolutely. That's why last week in the readings said, and that is why it is our hope that one day we'll hear Jesus Christ say, "Come, blessed of my Father, and inherit the kingdom prepared for you at the foundation of the world." Okay, now the other sense of the end of the world thing, how do people prepare for the end of the world? They buy ammunition, right? They buy boxes and boxes of food and supplies, and they dig a big hole in their backyard, and they build a bunker, and they put a sign out in their front yard that say "No zombies allowed," right? That's not the end of the world for us as Christians and Catholics. That's the end of the world for people who have no concept of anything beyond. They think that they can actually stop the end of the world from happening or survive the end of the world, the apocalypse. You can't. So, for Advent, though, what I want us to focus on, especially these first 2 weeks, is that one day we will die, each and every one of us. Now, it sounds, "Oh, Father, that's a real downer for Advent." No. One day we will be asked to bring our lives to its completion. Our path here on earth will end. But that's not the end. That's just part of the path, right? Your birth was part of the path. It was a transition point. Our death is a transition point. Okay? And so we want our lives to be on the right path. And so the first 2 weeks of Advent are meant to do that. Now, the season of Advent, in some ways, I think, matches our weather here in Western Washington. In Western Washington, during the winter, it is dark, the sun rises late, it goes down early, and we're lucky if we see the sun. This week, we get to see the sun, which is spectacular. But during the winters, we see clouds and rain and wind, and it's really, really dark. We don't even want to go outside. You don't see people playing outside in the parks. If they're outside, they're bundled up under 15 layers. We don't want to do that. What do we want to do? We want to go inside. Now, this is not the season necessarily, especially these first 2 weeks, of going inside and sitting by a warm fire and just being comfortable. This is about a work. This is about work where we perhaps take a book and we study, right? We refocus ourselves. We allow God to work deeper in our hearts, but in a very quiet way. We allow ourselves to be quiet with God. We come to adoration. We come into the church. Now we finally got a code on our door, a combination, so I'm going to be giving that out next week. Not publicly, but I'm going to be inviting parishioners so that every parishioner can get the code to that door and they can come inside and pray any time of the day they want. Okay? Great thing for Advent. Now, Advent is different than Lent. Lent, even though we wear the same color, even though we use the same colors liturgically, we use purple or violet, right? It doesn't really mean the same thing. Advent is meant to be like boot camp. It's not meant to be necessarily a season of silence, but it's a season where there's sacrifice, there's a season of action, there's a season of really working hard to conform our lives in very active ways according to Jesus' life, especially as we focus in on His transition, His death here on earth, right? In preparation for the resurrection. Advent, quieter, serious, transitioning into something powerful and beautiful in remembering Christmas. Lent, sacrifice, working hard, boot camp, okay? They're different seasons. Now, I'm going to go into Advent a little bit more. So here's the reality. We live in a culture that in the good sense still celebrates Advent in the sense it's preparing for Christmas. Everybody's preparing for Christmas. Everybody puts up decorations. Everybody's in the spirit of the season. But it may not be about Jesus, but we still celebrate Christmas, or we still prepare for Christmas in our culture. Now, the good thing is that gives us an avenue. It gives us an opportunity as those who are preparing for the spiritual side of the seasons to bring Jesus back out into the world in a way that the world may be halfway receptive, okay? Whereas if it was January or February, people would be like, what are you doing? If you're bringing Jesus out into the world, whereas now, if you say, Merry Christmas, people will say, oh, Merry Christmas. If you say something along the lines of, isn't it beautiful we're preparing to celebrate the birth of Jesus, happy birthday, Jesus. People are going to be like, oh yeah, happy birthday, Jesus, So there's an opportunity here for us to engage our world in a non-pushy way, but engage our world and say, hey, let's celebrate the birth of Jesus. Let's focus in on Jesus. Let's make this about Jesus. I was in a meeting, we had a retreat with the Pastoral Council the other day, and we're talking about what is our goals and objectives here, and part of it is to say we want people to see the face of Jesus Christ in everything we do. Everything that happens here in the parish, we want people to see the face of Jesus Christ in ourselves, in our actions, words, thoughts, in what we do, in how we decorate, in what people see in the church. We want everything to go back to so that people see the face of Jesus Christ. And so we want the season of Advent to be the same way. Okay? All right. Now, the downside right now is that many people are preparing for Christmas, but in some ways it's actually really, really bad, because what has Christmas become? It has become a day in which we celebrate the fact that we are materialistic and the ultimate consumers, right? What do we do throughout this Advent season? We buy. We buy. And yes, the gifts are hopefully, they're for others. It's an act of generosity. But in reality, it has become the preparation for the ultimate day of consumerism. We buy. And then Christmas comes. We fill our recycle bins with wrappings and packaging, all the way up, 30 feet high. And then what? Was that ever really in any way about Jesus? In my family, we did the same thing. We always did that. It wasn't about Jesus' birthday. It was the ultimate day of consumerism. Now, does that sound like we've gone back to worshiping some kind of an idol? Does that sound like in some way we've gone back to worshiping ourselves? Even though we're giving gifts to each other, it's really just about us? Right? Okay, it's Jesus' birthday. We bring it back to him. Now, a couple things I want to say about that. So when I was a teenager, I loved decorating the house. It wasn't necessarily always out of Christian charity. I got into that competitive mode, competing with the neighbors so that our house was decorated nicer, or we had more lights than anybody else on the street, kind of that Chevy Chase thing, right? It wasn't necessarily good. But a couple of things that I did, or that we did in the family. At one place where we lived, when we were living in Kent, we had a really, really tall Douglas fir tree in our backyard, and it was substantial. It was more prominent than most of the trees in the neighborhood. So I found a way to string up an 8-foot star that I had made, wrapped in Christmas lights, but also with stringers of Christmas lights, a whole bunch of strings of Christmas lights going all the way to. So I would hoist that thing way up in the tree. Now, my family would joke that I was trying to get planes to land on our house because we were close to the flight path of SeaTac Airport. But I wanted a star. I wanted a star to be the focal point, and people could see it from a long ways away. So it was a really powerful symbol. Then on the side of the house, so our house was, the front of the house wasn't really the front of the house, it was more like the side of the house, but it faced the street and had a big wall on it. And so I took a whole bunch of nails. I did this when my mom wasn't there. Took a whole bunch of nails, and just like connect the dots, I put in all these nails on the side of the house to form the shape of the nativity scene. And then I used Christmas lights to connect all the dots, right? And so it was a lit up nativity scene on the side of the house. That was one of those things where it was easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission. But it allowed people to see, my hope was, it allowed people to see that this was about Jesus Christ. Okay, a couple things. If you decorate your house, if you put lights up on your house, let people see the face of Jesus. Simple enough, right? Let people see the face of Jesus. Put something out there in your yard, something out on your house that points to Jesus. Okay? Put the reindeer in the backyard. Put the inflatable Santa Claus. Put him in the backyard. Put Jesus out in the front. Find something. Go online. You can still do it. There's still time. Order something that will point to Jesus Christ. Okay? Otherwise, the problem is not necessarily the people who see our house. The problem is with ourselves. That we are not celebrating Advent. We're not preparing even really for Christmas. It's just about ourselves. Okay, point to Jesus Christ. If you send out Christmas cards, have something in the card. Something. Use this as an opportunity. Point to Jesus Christ. Many people in their Christmas cards today, they'll type up a letter to kind of update people on their family, their kids. Sometimes they kind of brag, right? Point to Jesus Christ. Do something. Give a little spiritual reflection. Put a little holy card in there. Put your favorite prayer. Just say, hey, I want to share with you my favorite prayer, the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi or something. Something that will just grab people and say, oh yeah, happy birthday, Jesus. This is about Him. Let people... Don't be pushy about it, but just let people see Jesus. Don't put an obstacle to people seeing Jesus. Let people see Jesus, okay? If the letter is just about the kids and all their accomplishments, it's not really pointing to Jesus. Put something in there that points to Jesus and update the family as well. Okay. Do you bake cookies? Great. Tape a holy card to it. Tape a little image of the Christmas story, or say happy birthday Jesus or something. Put it on there. Even if it's at work, even if this is going to really test your humility with your coworkers, put something about Jesus. They're not going to fire you for it, okay? And if they do, you're better off working somewhere else. Anyways, it's easier for me to say I won't get fired doing it in my workplace. Okay. Keep Jesus in front. Allow people to see Jesus. And it's amazing. You know what we call this? We call it evangelization. It's not in your face. It's not obnoxious. It's innocent. It's simple. It's joyful. And it's pointing to Jesus. Okay. I'll see you next week. God bless.